Good evening, everyone. If I could gather everyone here and have your attention. Thank you all so much for coming this evening to the Windham World Affairs Council lecture for this evening. I just have a few words of introduction and welcome. I'd like to thank all of you for being here, those of you who are present, and also those of you who are online on the OWL. We have some that are online, and we also welcome those who perhaps will be watching this later on as it is being recorded. So welcome to all of you far away and near, and in the future, so to speak. I'd just like to also remind folks to register if you have not already, and to consider becoming members of the Windham World Affairs Council. Of course, we are a nonprofit, and we very much are able to host these lectures with the membership fees from the members. So if you have not become a member, I would really encourage you to do so that we can continue to offer quality programming in the years ahead. Also this evening there is a registration and a sort of like a sign up where we can get your details and perhaps be in further contact with you in the future. I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the board of the Windham World Affairs Council. My name is Scott Cooper, and I'm the minister of the Center Congregational Church here in downtown Brattleboro, Vermont. But more importantly, I'm one of many on the board of the Windham World Affairs Council. So I welcome you on behalf of the board. I'd like to thank Maria for being here today. She is recording this lecture on behalf of the Brattleboro Community Television. So thank you very much for being with us. I'd just like to ask everyone, if you have your phones, if you can just be sure to silence them so that they don't interrupt the proceedings, and help yourself to any refreshments. And of course, bathroom facilities are around both corners here. With those brief words of introduction, I would like to introduce to you our speaker this evening. It is Dr. Jack Jewell. I'm sort of loosely affiliated with him. He is my mother's brother, which technically, specifically makes him my uncle, I believe.
Good, you got that right.
So, you know, I'm very, very proud. We have brought him here all the way from, I believe, Geneva, and at great expense. Just came in a day or two ago. So I am privileged to have him here, as are all of you. I'm sure that you were able to read a brief biography that was included in some of the promotional materials that advertise this event. I am going to, in a sense, assume that you have read the biography as it probably enticed you to come. But Jack is a optical physicist, and he hails from University of Arizona, and while I don't think it's unemployed, you're semi-retired, right? Yes,
My
okay, yes.
father called me an employee.
Yeah, he is a scientist, and all I know, sort of growing up as a child, is he sort of invented things and then built a company around them, ran the company, got tired of the company, sold the company, and invented something else, and just did the whole thing all over again. But I would just like to, as a matter of introduction, just say that Jack, I think, has had an inverse proportionality, an influence on my life as much as I've spent time with him. So I've spent time with him a very little bit, but he has impacted my life in inverse proportions to that. I remember one of my first memories of Jack was, I believe it was in the 1980s, when Halley's Comet came, and he arrived at our house in Connecticut, and he bought us a telescope, and we went out into the front yard, and for the first time, I saw space. I saw Halley's Comet, and that was very formative for me. I also remember as a young child going to his laboratories. It was Bell Labs, and he would bring out liquid nitrogen, and we would just squeal with glee at freezing things and breaking them. Just a wonderful source of joy as well as education. As an adult, Jack and we hiked up Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania together. And that sort of expedition to the highest peak in Africa really began my passion and my love for running, which has been one of the greatest enjoyments of my life. So for all of these reasons, Jack really has impacted my life, and I hope that he is able tonight to share with you a bit of his life and his partner Tina's life as they had this incredible expedition to Antarctica. So with that sort of personal biography rather than professional biography, I thank you very much, Jack, for being here with us and sharing with us your story. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we get started, I would like my partner Tina Boniface to stand up, because you see her name right there. We took part of this expedition together. Many of the photographs are hers, and most especially the videos. And so this was a partner thing. And so I was glad to share this with you. So with all that, which is impossible to live up to, but I'm trying, I'll just say good evening. What a wonderful weather you've got here in Vermont. It's just beautiful outside. We often get asked, okay, how was this trip? It's like, you've got 1,000 things that are going on, and so the only word I could come up with is profound. It was just so profound in so many ways. The icebergs that we saw, they're like works of art, sculptures that you're just riding the ship through the middle of, and they've got colors, and then there's that animal life just all over in the sea and on the land. The southern ocean currents that we learned about. It just goes on and on. The experiences of going ashore in these Zodiac boats and touring through. And every day was just filled for a month. It was a month-long journey, essentially all of last January in the Antarctic summer, which wasn't especially warm, but it was sunny because the sun never went down. And once we got below the Arctic Circle, and it was close enough to the solstice, that was up for about 3 weeks. And so we never saw the black sky. And so it was just profound in many ways, and just feel very happy and privileged to have done this thing. And I can't overstate that. I've just got a few things to make sure I don't forget. Yes, I would like to thank the Windham World Affairs Congress for inviting us here. It is a privilege to speak in front of all of you. I really appreciate your attending. So, our journey began. So this is how our journey went. Let's see, I don't have a pointer, so I'll use this pointer. Starting in Ushuaia, the southernmost city in the world, about 55 degrees southern latitude. Down across the Drake Passage, notorious for its winds and waves. Down the peninsula. And what really got me excited about this trip was the fact that it didn't just go back. It went on and on across, you see the Arctic Circle here. And it went down right along the coast and out in the seas and into the Ross Sea and Ross Ice Shelf. And then we came up the coast, various stops at islands along the way, and finally ended up in New Zealand. And so it was, the name of the program was Epic Antarctica. It's run by a collaboration between Lindblad Expeditions, which has been in the business of Antarctic tours since the 1970s. So it's a highly experienced company, unlike some companies we've heard about recently. And it's a collaboration between Lindblad Expeditions and National Geographic. So there's a lot of credibility here. The ship itself, named Endurance, not looking for a repeat performance, but it is extremely well designed by the best of people in the business. And so we felt very safe along the ways. Stuff can always happen, but it didn't. So that's the gist of the whole trip. Here we are departing Ushuaia in the Beagle Channel. This was discovered on the ship with the name I might get confused because it's Endeavour. They both start with E and D. But it's more south than the Strait of Magellan, and it's a much easier passage. And so that's where most of the ships go out these days. We got into the Drake Strait. It was fairly kind to us. The waves can get 50, 60 feet. There were more in the order of 15 to 18 or so. It's rocking and rolling, but not, not extremely. What was amazing too is to see the most albatrosses and a similar bird called petrel, and they were so adept at soaring in gale force winds. It was going, and their wingtips will go within inches of the waves, and they're just like la-di-da-di-da. That's what they do, and it's just amazing, and they were constantly a part of us in much of the voyage. We were tourists, okay? We were not Antarctic explorers. The ship was well equipped to deal with the physical issues, but they made it very nice too. And this is our New Year's Eve celebration. Since we left on December 30th in the evening, this was just after a day into the trip. There was music and champagne and rocking in many ways, at least 2 ways. On the 1st of January, New Year's Day, we did one of our first Zodiac outing and learned the whole drill about, you could put on the different layers of socks and long underwear and the pants, and then you go down and put the rain pants on and the other layers, the hats, and worst of all, the life jacket, which you started off like feeling like a kitten with a ball of yarn or something. Then you get it all straight and you figure it all out. This was our first day, and it started, it was howling winds, and basically like that.
You can see how windy it is. The snow is blowing past, and the water is just going crazy. There's a fallen down tower over there. Sorry. Anyway, I'm going to stop.
Welcome to Antarctica. This is Deception Island. It's like an atoll, except it's a volcanic, caldera.
We stopped briefly there, didn't go ashore, but this is on the bow of the ship where people spent a lot of time, and you can see, you know, the remains of some expedition stations, and they had to be evacuated, I think in the 1960s or so, thereabouts, or 70s, because the volcano erupted. And so, although it didn't destroy these buildings, there's nobody in the mood for settling in there. This is one of our, we did get onto another island. This kind of a structure is called a nunatak, which is a, you know, typically pointy mountain that occurs in an ice cap, a permanent ice cap. And the heat of the mountain is what kind of melts the ice immediately surrounding with that interesting looking moat. And you know, it's a very rugged thing. You can look at it there. While we were out walking, Tina said she wanted to go up there and climb it. Our expedition leader looked totally horrified. He just wasn't used to Tina's sense of humor. But everybody eventually did. Even the penguins are laughing, you see. They stride around like that. I've got a sharper picture of it that just, this is a Gen 2 penguin, recognizable by the lipstick. And essentially all penguins, I mean, look at this feet. You know, this claws, you know, the rugged skin, and the veins and the arteries of this bird going down to the feet, they go right by each other. So they're a heat exchanger. The blood coming up the veins gets warmed up by the blood coming down, so while the blood comes down to, by the time it gets to the foot, it's almost the temperature of the Arctic, so it's not losing heat very much out of the feet. It's been minimized. So it's a well-designed foot. I would love to have feet like that, although if you look at my toes, you'll think I'm becoming a penguin. But we'll leave that out. Here there are, these are chin-strap penguins, noted by the, see, by their chin straps. And this is what, I don't think there was land anywhere nearby. It didn't seem to matter. They're just out swimming and they jump on ice floes and all kinds of things. This bird is not a penguin, it's a shag, which is a type of cormorant. I can only imagine its eyes rolling at these silly creatures over there. Okay, so about the axis, part of the title. The Antarctic is unique on the Earth because it's got, you know, these currents that are caused by Coriolis forces and everything all over the sea. But in the Antarctic, it can go around and around and around without running into any continents. And so that is the strongest current in the world. And you get the highest winds and the highest waves and all these things associated with it. But these currents are extremely important to the Earth's climate and a lot of things, the life and everything. The deeper currents are shown in blue, and the shallower currents are in red. And this current going around and around like an engine interacts with the currents in the oceans and actually affects them in a very significant way. I'll point out one in particular, the one that comes up here, goes up the Atlantic Ocean, and becomes the well-known Gulf Stream, which is responsible for keeping northern Europe as warm as it is, given the latitudes up at 60 degrees and things like that. And, you know, these currents are a lot more important than a lot of people realize. It's responsible for Earth's climate. If you mess around with these currents, or if they get messed around for whatever reason, it will greatly affect the Earth's climate. And there's a lot going on today that is affecting all of these currents, the polar ice melting from Antarctica, as well as the north, but mainly from Antarctica. That's got the most freshwater ice in the world, and it's affecting the strongest current in the world. So there's whatever goes on down here has significant effects all over the whole world. It's not just this little isolated place down there. And that's extremely important today. This is a diagram of how it works. You've got the deep currents, the shallow currents, and how they're affecting the currents in the Atlantic and Indian and Pacific Oceans. I'm not going to go into details on this, but you will all be given a quiz at the end of this presentation. Of course, the sea bottom is not flat. It's got mountains and ridges and cracks and all kinds of things. And so as the deep currents go over this, remember the deep currents are full of phytoplankton and lots of nutrients, which are the very base of the food chain. And so when the currents hit these hills, they go up, and the nutrients come up, and so a lot of fish come over there. They know where it is. And in fact, the birds come over there as well, because they know where these places of more abundant life are. And we passed a lot of these places on the way. And so here's a little video of
I've got a whole flock of petrels. They're finally here, hanging around despite my presence.
this could be hundreds of miles from land or anything. They just live out there.
Since we got above the continental shelf, that's where a lot of the seaweed and basic things that they like to eat come up to the surface. They fly right over the surface, and it's just a glorious scene with all of this. Looking at the birds, holding the camera. This is just fabulous. It's been, all kinds of wonders to see out here. There's the whole flock.
This wasn't the most spectacular showing of this we got, but we saw, but it's the best one that we caught on video. There are lots of more, even better ones. And so, this is one of our many zodiac tours that were just like boating through a fairyland. I mean, look at this iceberg, how well sculpted it is. And it's got all of these lines that kind of represent, well, they show where the water line used to be. And the icebergs are constantly moving around instead of being still. And so what was once the water line formed like that, it'll turn and move. And so it raises this out of the water. It turns due to parts breaking off or melting. Here's another one showing the colors. And I did no enhancement photographically to try and enhance the colors. The blue is really that blue, and you've really got violet on top of here. Other icebergs had green coloration. You can see the iceberg under the water as well. It's just spectacular and quite moving. This is also pretty far from land, and you just see an iceberg with a bunch of penguins all over it. You've got two species of them here, and just, I don't know what they're doing. They're talking about life or something. They're just chattering, and they're just around up. You might wonder how they get from the water up to there, because the flippers don't look very good for climbing. But they can swim like crazy, and they swim upward. You see the edges from there, and they just come flying straight out of the water, but forward, and land on their feet. You saw those claws, and they just grab right in. So it's astonishing. And, more and more astonished by penguins than I ever thought I would be. There'll be more about that. Right after we went by that iceberg, some humpback whales swam right alongside the ship. Got the camera aiming straight down on here. Couldn't get the whole thing in because I had a mild telephoto. Here's another pair of them. You can see a younger one here and a parent here. After that, on the same day, and we're still in early January here, we went through this passage called the Lemaire Channel. And I underexposed this on purpose so that you could see the cloud structures and the reflections without them blinding the camera. This is another shot of the same peak, actually, just from a different angle, because we're sailing through the passage. Again, there's no enhancement on the color here. It's just, that's how it appeared to the eye. It actually appears better than it does on the screen. It appears more like right here on the laptop. But with glassy water with great reflections, just being there was profound. Just like, here we are, at the bottom of the world, and just viewing all this rugged, spectacular beauty. There's the side of our ship, and a little bit of wake causing these nice reflecting ripples. And there's some more as we're exiting the channel. Another Fairyland Zodiac tour. This one was most pronounced in the blue ice that we saw. Just magically beautiful. And again, you can see how this iceberg turned a few times to reveal where the water lines used to be. Got lots of icicles too. Obviously, these icicles were formed after, when the iceberg was in its present position, because they're all straight down vertical. This is basically how it felt going through this Fairyland. This is a piece of ice one of our other passengers chipped out, and later we brought it onto the ship and chipped it into smaller pieces to be used in cocktails. It seems like a worthy use for such a beautiful piece of ice. And here's a short video that Tina took to give you a much better idea of how it is journeying through that.
Skog Bay.
Skog Bay.
Jack, what portion of the iceberg do you actually see again? I can't remember.
It's between 10 and 20%. Yeah, so most of it's, the vast majority is underwater. There's another one. Just sometimes the light coming through is just spellbinding. Who do you find out there? It is the holiday season. But, and yes, but those are members of the expedition crew. That's not real Santa Claus. He's at the North Pole, not the South Pole. But they brought us out hot cider and little bits of, some treats in there for those who want. We didn't want to get all snockered when you're out in the Antarctic. But this bay is called Skog Bay, as Tina mentioned on the video, and it's named after Leif Skad. He's a Swedish, very renowned ship captain, ice navigator. He developed a lot of techniques, and he was also instrumental in the design of the Endurance ship itself, in terms of its ruggedness, the bow shape, just a lot of features which are key to making a ship operate safely down there, which is important to everybody. And we were lucky enough that Leif Skad himself and his wife Ellen were honored guests aboard our trip here. And in fact, this is him. That's Leif Skad right there, for whom after this bay was named after. It was a real privilege to be with them. He's kind of on the boat, the flagship boat there. This is Captain Oliver of the Endurance, and a lot of other people, Nash Geo photographer, and lots of people. This is the ship's bridge. I took this from inside the bridge and looking out at the mountains. What was special on this, many things special on the expedition, was the fact that the bridge, where think of the Star Trek Enterprise, we were allowed there 24/7. You don't have to fill out a form or ask permission. You just put on a mask and go in. You don't want the captain to get sick, right? And they would answer questions as long as they're not, really riveted to the instruments to go. And it was just really special. And that is the captain there, and this other guy pointing the finger at something out there is the expedition leader. And just above the bridge is the library. It had, of course, a whole collection of great books. It's got a glass globe here, and it's got the windows just creating allowing a panoramic view, just all around, a very wide angle. It's got binoculars and spotter scopes, and you can look at things with it. It's a real pleasure. And you see all the people out there on the deck, and there's a good reason for that. Not exactly a sailboat, although it was unusual. What is a sailboat doing down here? It was following killer whales. And the killer whales, they had put GPS tags on the killer whales so that they could follow them. And killer whales were quite busy. This is a scene through my modest telephoto. Actually, I have a longer lens, but you can zoom in and see how they look. And then, so what follows is a ship's video. Neither of us took the following video, but there was a person on the ship, professional videographer. And so I'll let you see this, complete with the drums. Nice sleeping. They were pushing on this ice floe trying to tip it over. And of course, eat the seal. It's a good thing the seal wasn't wearing pants, otherwise they would be soiled. All surrounded by this spectacular landscape.
What happened to the seal?
Everybody was asking each other, well, who do you vote for? I think it was about even. I know personally, I thought, whatever happens, it's going to happen.
But you don't know.
Well, no, we do know. I mean,
Oh, we do know. Yeah, that's right. Yes. The seal prevailed. It got away. The people in the sailboat who were following them said that earlier that day, the killer whales were successful and ate several seals. And they think that for this one, it was the end of the day. They were kind of full, and they were practicing, letting the young practice at how to do this. They all, see how they all come up together. They're just, they're in formation. They're an organized group. Killer whales are just amazingly intelligent. There's another island expedition. Usually whenever we went on land, almost always there were penguins. And this is Tina photographing some of them. She's identifiable by the color and the pattern of the backpack, because almost all the passengers were given these orange coats with the fur liners and all that. And so, and
they're all over covering, and so it's hard to tell who is who. In fact, it resembles like you see a whole bunch of penguins together and you can't tell one from another. We're like a bunch of penguins walking around, except if we have an identifying.
So what is the temperature at this time?
It's typically hovering around freezing. Yeah, it was, you know, in the more northern parts, a little above, down in the Ross Sea and everything, is at several degrees below freezing.
Summertime?
Yeah, it was summertime.
Is the wind constant?
No, it's kind of constantly there, but sometimes gentle and sometimes, like you saw in the first video. Later we got to one of our on-island expeditions. We visited a hut. In fact, this island is called Stonington Island, which was named after Stonington, Connecticut. It was named by a British group, and one of the members had worked and liked Stonington because it was a ship harbor, you know, site where many ships came from. So, but anyway, this building was built in the 1940s and operated for a few decades. We got to go inside. Nobody wanted to spend the winter there.
Who operated it?
The British. Yep. And, kitchen on our Endurance was a whole lot nicer than that. They did have books, you know, a lot of bookshelves, you know, things ranging from The Call of the Wild to Polar Exploration to Lucille Marries the Doctor. You want to have variety. This is on the same island. There's me holding my childhood teddy bear. Went along for the trip. And here's our ship. I just wanted to point out these two, you can really see just one of them, these two igloos, we call them. They're like glass igloos. And people were allowed to spend one night in these igloos. And so later on, Tina and I did. This is one of these days on the ship, we had 3 expeditions to the Zodiacs, you know, on the shore and Zodiac tours. This is one that went on the mainland of Antarctica after dinner. It was a tiring day, but well worth it. It was also interesting because it seemed calm at first, but then when it was time to get into the Zodiacs, the waves, they were rising, the Zodiacs, like 4 feet up and down. So you were like, everybody was, and very careful. We'd have 2 people, one grabbing an arm, you know, like in a double grip, you know, both of your arms, and each with a person, and stepping down into there to keep it, you know, safe. It's just another picture from the mainland. Tina and I holding Bubba, the teddy bear. Another island, these are skua, they're called skuas, and they're gulls, they're like a big seagull, a really big seagull. And their favorite foods are penguin eggs and penguin chicks. And so all of these places, wherever there's penguins, there's skuas going after their getting, and they get a lot of them. There were lots and lots of chick skeletons or remains just lying all around. Despite that, there's hundreds of thousands of penguins everywhere, so everybody's doing well. The skuas may seem cruel because they eat things that we think are cute, but they have chicks to feed too, just like everybody. You can see the penguins just looking up and saying, here come the fighters. This is on the same place, just where the ice got covered with a lot of volcanic ash, creating this sort of lunar-esque landscape.
Which species is that?
That looks,
Adelie.
that's an Adelie, yeah. Adelies are my favorite penguin, which you'll see why much later in the show. After that, we spent a couple of days, or a day and a half,
out at sea, and then we came further south and into the ice flow region. And you can just see it goes on and on and on. All you can see are ice flows. And we crashed through them. It was really exciting. This is about 4 o'clock in the morning. But a lot of people, including me, wanted to get up and see. There's the front of the ship. You know, you can see how it just cracks the ice as it goes through and makes a lot of grinding and crunching sounds as you go. And again, you saw how far away from everything it was, but there's animals all over them. Here's an emperor penguin, the first that we saw, and you can see the tracks it made. You know, it's just really kind of, again, you feel like some artist made this whole image. And we saw a leopard seal. We went very close to this one, so close enough so that if I take the same picture and zoom in, you can see the teeth. These teeth are very utilitarian. The bottom and top teeth on the rows, they interlock together, and so that you can strain water out. And actually, about 60% of a leopard seal diet is krill. And krill is a crustacean, you know, about this big or so. You know, it's kind of similar to a shrimp, but it's not a shrimp. And it's what, you know, whales eat, and even leopard seals if you can, because it's all around and it's easy to catch. You know, you just kind of like, you know, especially if your teeth are designed right. Of course, the molars those are the scary part. And the leopard seals also eat other seals. They're smaller, and this one's obviously been through quite a harrowing experience, and I think it's got to be a leopard seal because you can see these scars. They're in pairs, about the same spacing as the leopard seals.
This is crabbies.
Yeah, the crab eaters. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, that was. We saw a lot of them with scars, but that was the most serious that I saw. And our night at the igloo. We saw the igloo on the back of the ship, and this was Tina and my night to spend on the igloo. And Tina took this lovely capture of the experience. You can hear the ship crunching through the ice.
Okay, we're in the igloo. Here we are. It's our night. It's our night in the igloo. I'll show you the igloo in a moment, but we just hit this ice flow, and you can hear the noise. You can hear the ship rumbling through it. Oh look, oh look, what do you call it, Jack? It's a lead? A leadway?
A lead.
A lead. There's a lead up ahead.
Lead with 2 E's.
Yep, a lead with 2 E's opposed to a lead with 1 E, which would be a lead. But anyway, so look at this. Here's the igloo. This is the igloo where we're sleeping tonight. And there's the midnight sun. It's not quite midnight, but it's getting there. And then there's a monster coming up. Be careful. Watch. Oops, see? There it is. There's the monster.
There's a penguin down there.
Oh, there's a penguin? Where's the penguin? Oh, look at that. Check it out. I don't know if you can see it in the video because it's far, look, all by itself. It's an emperor penguin. Jack, it's an emperor penguin. Yes.
Wow.
Oh man, I bet everybody got, okay, I'm gonna shut this off right now because there's an emperor penguin. Do you see it sliding across the snow? Oh my God, it's scared of the ship, but I'm turning this off. Here we go.
Oh, there's a seal over there.
Oh, there's a seal?
I'm afraid of this.
Oh no, there's a seal over there. Oh, this is so extraordinary. It really is so
It's hard to turn the
extraordinary.
camera off.
It kind of makes you want to cry because it's just like that.
Get some good
Oh
reflections
man,
coming up.
what's an emperor penguin? Eduardo must be singing opera if he sees it. All right, here, look at this. Oh my goodness, it's so gorgeous. It is so gorgeous. And we're in this extraordinary ship. Here, I'll just go around. So there's shut it off, but there's our robes for tonight for when we're in the hot tub. We can scamper down to the sauna.
There was no
There's the
heating
bed.
inside the igloo.
And there's the robes, other robes. robes galore, water bottles too. Okay, that's good for now. I'm gonna watch, oh goodness, so many things to see. Okay, good night.
That sums up how the whole voyage was. I mean, we just, oh my, whoa. That's,
It seemed like it never stopped.
oh. Then, let's see, it was the 7th of January, so we're just like a week into this whole trip. And they had the before dinner summary of the day. And so Captain Oliver came out and said, well, we are at the remote part of Earth from civilization. You know, where we started was this many thousand miles away. New Zealand was that many thousand miles away. And here we are at the farthest point, and as Murphy's Law would have it, they got this communication. It was actually a lot more complicated than just getting an email like that. We had no internet, we had very little communication, just radio communication from the ship. And they had different languages, you know, they were speaking Spanish, it was a Ukrainian ship, and we spoke English. But you can see from the letter that what happened was this fishing vessel, a Ukrainian fishing vessel, had a crew member who had an accident and lost 2 fingers, basically. The problem with that, I mean, obviously it's a problem, but the life-threatening problem is it could get gangrene if it's not properly treated. And the fishing vessel had no doctor and not even a medic. And there was nobody else around. And so as maritime law and just humanitarian ethics had it, we were on a mission to go and save this person. So we set out, and again, that communication is dated the 6th of January. So we had a plan to go and rendezvous with the ship. We thought we would get there in a couple of days or less, but the direct route turned out to be just too thick of ice for our ship to go through. Now the Endurance it's a Class 5A icebreaker, you know, which means it can go through ice even during the winter and even old ice, but only up to a certain thickness. It's not like a real world-class icebreaker, but for a touring vessel, it's way up there. In fact, it's as strong as they get for a ship like this. And by the way, when we say a cruise ship, it's not a 5,000 passenger thing. It was 125 passengers, you know, quite modest, and almost that many crew in a large ship. So the presentations, they showed a lot of the maps, which are definitely hard to follow, but the circles kind of show where they estimate where we'll be, next stop, meet, and we were kind of like here, and then we're going to go there, to meet the ship. We finally did, just after noon on the 12th of January. So that was 5 days after that meeting that we had, and 6 days after that first communication, almost 6. So they sent out a couple of Zodiacs to the ship, came back, it was snowing, you can see by all the fuzz, and they brought him on. You can't really see them in this photo, but they brought them on. They treated him right away, and so he was safe. You know, it was just his fingers, so he was walking around, and he was given free rein to the ship just to go around. And yeah, he was a nice guy. He didn't speak any English at all. Fortunately, there was a Russian scientist on board, one of the expedition crew, and so she could speak. You know, she spoke Russian, of course, and she could speak with him pretty well. So anyway, that was very heartening for all the passengers were entirely behind this. You know, it took us out of our plans. You know, we'd done this, but we rescued this guy instead. But it was a very positive experience. So off we went, and within a few hours of picking this guy up, we see a Ross seal. It's quite a rare seal. I think the population is estimated at between 2 and 20,000 of seals in the world, just in the Ross Sea. And one of the crew members had gone to the Ross Sea several times and not seen one. We saw several of them that day. It was astonishing to them. You can identify a Ross seal quite easily by the neck. I mean, notice there's like there isn't a neck. And plus, they're probably the cutest seal face that there is. I mean, it's just, how can you resist that? And their flipper design, I didn't mean that, but their flipper structure is quite well adapted to swimming. More of these lovely sculptures. The ship just kept sailing through them all the time. Never got tired of them. During one dinner, we had a particularly large, just like a parade of icebergs, except the parade stood still while we moved alongside it. And again, I underexposed this to just show the colors better. The sun's up inside the cloud here. That's actually the same iceberg in a different light. Just mind-blowingly beautiful. So kept having to get up from dinner and race out to the deck to take photos. If you're looking for a place to park, here's several places. And this is a tabular glacier, the kind of glacier which formed that other smaller one with the parking places. It's just a piece of a very large ice shelf that breaks off, and so you got this flat, iceberg floating around. After that, we'd reached the Ross Sea. And so this is a map where we went. Tina drew some stars where we had landings. You can see this is where James Clark Ross, after whom the sea is named, back in 1842, reached the furthest south of any human had ever reached. And that's also the place where Amundsen had his base camp before he reached the South Pole. This other guy, little known, Karsten Borchgrevink, reached the furthest south in 1900. We also went over here to Ross Island, near McMurdo Sound. We hoped to tour the Scott base and or McMurdo Sound, but the ice was too thick, so we didn't. But we had an amazing time at the island. And then we'll sail up and try to reach Coleman Island. And there's another site up here, kind of at the northern part of Antarctica, that we'll stop. Well, here we are at 78 degrees and 3/4, 78 3/4 degree southern latitude. And that's the Ross ice shelf right out the door. And we're about to get into our zodiacs. And that's Tina holding my backpack with Bubba inside. And so here we are, and the main ship is Roy. And boy, when you're out there in the zodiac, you're thinking, it's pretty far. And just look out there, but see, there's all those other little zodiacs going around, and the ship itself is looking kind of weird, a little bit wavy there, but that's just due to the atmospheric turbulence. And here's the Ross ice shelf right outside of our cabin window. We had these nice big floor-to-ceiling windows. In fact, there were sliding doors.
Is that ice shelf sea ice, or is that land ice, which was sort of?
That's freshwater ice. So yes, it's land ice.
I thought it
Yeah. Well, I would rethink that. I mean, what happened? It is freshwater ice, but when sea ice freezes, it can't hold the salt, and so the salt goes out, and so what's left over there frozen is freshwater ice. Yeah, and it's really important for the whole ecology of what's going on, because so what comes out, you get this saltier water because it's lost the salt out of it, and it's also colder. I mean, sea ice doesn't freeze at 0 degrees centigrade. It has to get several degrees centigrade lower. And so what you have is this cold water that's enriched in salt, and so it sinks because it's more dense than just regular seawater. And so that goes down, and that partly causes these currents and churnings and enrichment of phytoplanktons, again, the base of the food chain. This is all the same day we did the Rossi Zodiac tour. Then we came a little bit northward. There's still the Ross ice shelf out here. And look at all the killer whales. They're just spouting all the time. And there's just a little bit of a close-up on it. Then here's a video. Unfortunately, no sound. But this has got, you can just see them. And there were a lot of pods like this. In fact, the expedition crew estimated between 50 and 70 killer whales in this super pod, because there were like all these little groups, kind of congregating around, having a big congressional meeting or something. It's just, it sounds silly, but it could really be. Yes, yeah, in a family level as well as a larger level. There's my only picture. I like taking star pictures, but that's the only star we could see on the whole trip. And still the Ross Ice Shelf there. Now we're on Ross Island, close to McMurdo Sound, but we couldn't get in there. The penguins look like they're hitching a ride. In fact, sometimes they do jump into the Zodiacs, and they just think they're the coolest can be. And maybe it was a dare, who knows? But it does look like they're ready to, maybe they're daring each other. There's some of the icicles. That was just definitely the biggest icicles I ever saw. Completely dwarf the Zodiac boat. And then we had the Zodiac tour, and we saw dozens of ice floes like this covered with penguins, and they were jumping all around, and it was just like, it's a total circus, you're just going around, and they were everywhere.
Do the killer whales go after penguins?
A killer whale will eat penguins, sure, absolutely. Yeah, nice little tidbit for, whet your appetite. But the penguins are looking for killer whales and leopard seals before they jump. They get to the edge and act pretty timid, and then they start jumping, and then they just go one after the other. Like, there they go. Doo-doo-doo-doo. It looks like so much fun. It looks like a happy penguin. Well, after we were watching all the penguins, we noticed the ship moved. It's like, hey, wait. Wait for us. No, we went back to the ship. They had pulled into a kind of a protected harbor area where it was, you can see the waves are very small. And so that's the perfect place to go out on the sea kayaks, which they had about a dozen of them on the ship. And so we went out in 2 waves. This is just looking out from our little deck on the first wave going out. And also you can see the little tarp, placed between the 2 Zodiacs. Sorry, I got the 2 Zodiacs and this tarpon that people can stand on. That'll be important soon. And so here's the kayak, just get 2 people paddling the kayaks. We watched this ice floe breaking up and the pieces drifting around just live in front of us. And that's one of the scenes, the prettier scenes from our kayak tour. And we just loved it and stayed out as long as we can. Said, all right, come back. And so we went back, and throughout the whole time they had talked about a polar plunge. Think about that. The only thing I found attractive about that was the bragging rights, maybe. So we weren't sure, but we got off the Zodiac and there's all these people down there in their bathrobes and say, are you doing the plunge? And we was like, we are. People older than us were. Okay. So we went up, got in our bathrobes and came down. And there we go.
You go under?
Oh yeah. Yeah, the people standing there, those were on the tarps, but we didn't jump onto that. We went down under the water. Some people were a little more ridiculous than others. And then the most admired, in my opinion, was the crew, the chief of the hotels, the rooms, all the service and everything like that. That's him, that's Patrick. Just an amazing guy, cool guy, fun person. And there he is with another crew member, going in full uniform. And if that wasn't...
You're correct, actually.
So, if that wasn't enough, they went right back on there and started serving hot cider with your choice of spiking.
Was there a sauna in the building?
Is there?
A sauna? Was there a sauna?
Yes.
That's exactly where we went,
Oh.
right after that. I don't have a picture of it because we didn't have our cameras. And we went into the sauna, which had nice big windows, and we're sitting there warming up, watching penguins jump out in the water. I mean,
What was the water temperature?
-2 degrees centigrade. So, several degrees below freezing.
Not 1 hour.
Oh, about a half a second. The feet go like a cartoon. No, it was between 5 and 10 seconds. Typically, you just go in there and, yes, it's cold.
No heart attacks?
The doctor was down there with her bag, just in case.
Yeah.
It seems like I've read over the years, periodically, about something about the Ross ice shelf breaking off. Did they talk about that, and did they talk about how quickly that's happening, and any info on that?
They did extensively about the melting, its impact on climate. As I've shown before, the currents affected greatly. We did have a plan. We were going to go to the so-called Doomsday Glacier
Right.
and take some measurements, but I think the ice was going to be too thick to get there, and plus we had a Ukrainian fisherman to rescue. So we didn't go there, but yeah, that was discussed all the time. I just don't have any real visuals to
Did the
show
captain
that.
talk about any first-hand experience about what it was like 20 years ago as opposed to now, or?
Not that we heard. So
I'm not even sure that the captain had been down there before. The captain, I don't think he'd been down there before, had he?
I don't think he had, but I'm sure Leif Scott
Leif Scott.
had been, as he delivered all kinds of materials, but I didn't hear firsthand about such.
They gave lectures every single day, and a lot, there were scientists on board, and they did give us lectures on all different aspects of the environment down there. And yes, that is certainly addressed, the melting of the glaciers, the capping that is accelerating.
And can you tell me again, I know I've read this, but I forgot, why they call it the Doomsday Glacier?
Because when the glaciers come into the sea, they're actually sitting on the bottom, okay, on the sea bottom, okay, and that stops the glacier from flowing as fast as it might. And what's happening is not only is the glacier receding, I'm talking about the glacier going, up and to down and left this way over here, and so, but the sea is warming, and it's actually undercutting that glacier.
Right.
But why they call it the Doomsday Glacier is because, okay, instead of just slowly going into the sea, then if it gets too much undercut, and then the weight of it can break off a large piece, but then what's up here, up higher on the land, doesn't have that part on the bottom holding it up, and so it can just all slide down relatively rapidly. And so that could rapidly raise the sea level, you know, in a short time.
And we're talking about a huge area, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm. This is Mount Everest, active Erebus. I always get that wrong. Thank you. It's a real famous active volcano. One of our crew members worked at McMurdo for some years and actually climbed up that. I don't think you're allowed to anymore. So off we sailed away. We wanted to land on Coleman Island, which is on the way up the Ross Sea. But we got stopped by the ice. So they sent me ashore, or onto the ice shelf, to try and pull the ship in, but it didn't go very far. More colorful glaciers. This is one of the best green ones that we saw. Just endlessly beautiful, nice little icicle hanging down. And then we're kind of leaving the Ross Sea, and I couldn't resist just staying up until 5 in the morning, just gaping out the windows. Tina stayed most of the time, and just thinking, my God, this is the Ross Sea. You know, it's just unbelievable to be there. And then we reached the point, Cape Adair, which is kind of the northernmost part of the Antarctic continent that we reached. And it is part of the mainland. This is about 1,000-foot high ridge over here. We'll get back to that later. But down in the lower right is this place that, again, that guy Kirsten Borchgrevink, they set up this little hut in 1899, and 10 people stayed in there over the Antarctic winter. That was the first Antarctic winter. The year before there was one, but it was a ship stuck in the ice. But this is the first one actually on land and on the mainland, no less. So it's amazing what condition it's in. I mean, other parts of it fell apart. They had big cables over the roof, well dug into the soil to keep it from blowing away. We got to go inside that. I mean, it was, again, such a privilege to be inside this hut. These are the bunks, some old bottles here. One of the members was a pretty good artist, so he drew this on the bottom of the other person's bunk. Right there. They didn't have a whole lot of room, so you could just reach up there and lay them down. Yeah, and he's got some writing about it, which I can't really read.
What year was this?
The winter of 1899 to 1900.
What did they eat?
Oh, they had their store stuff in cans, pemmican. They ate penguins, seals, mostly those. It wasn't fun. By the way, yeah, this whole bit of I brought about the Antarctic explorers. There's one of my favorite quotes of all time for exploration. This guy, Apsley Cherry Garrard, who was on the Scott expedition and did this horrific journey across an island in the middle of the winter. His introductory sentences: polar exploration is at once the cleanest and most isolated way of having a bad time that has ever been devised. You know, and some of these people went to World War I after that. And the people said it was, being in the trenches in World War I was like a picnic compared to this. So,
I'm glad I wasn't one of those people. That doesn't sound fun at all. So we're still there on Cape Adair. The penguins, endlessly cute, adorable. Speaking of which, and here we are just outside the hut. There are a lot of barrels outside. The tops are all gone. You just see the stage there. And the penguins have moved in to, this is a good place to build a nest. It's sheltered from the wind and other penguins. There's a skua, again, just on the lookout endlessly for opportunities, and our faithful ship. And that is the port side of the ship. And so this is our cabin was right here. And to capture the mood of the whole thing, a couple of excellent Tina videos.
Here too, you've got these little
You can
chicks
see them run.
wanting very badly to get some food from their parent, and the parent is not so into it. Yes, they are about 2 weeks away from fledging. There we go.
Is he regurgitating it out?
Yes.
See, Micah, we could do that at Market 32.
You have to run away though.
Just throw up in aisle 2.
But wait, there's more.
Okay, once again, here we are at the penguin colony. Oh, look at those chicks chasing their parent. The chicks now, I understand, are about 2 weeks away from fledging, and it looks like a lot of the parents are kind of fed up with, oh, there they go,
Fed up.
chasing their mom or their dad. Look all around here, everybody's chicks sleeping and hanging out. It's a bit of a cacophony. It's smelly, but not terribly.
It's all the penguins run.
There's
You see that their
chicks
hips are
over
way
there.
up in the body. It's not
Trying to get
like their
food.
legs are this long.
And a lot of the parents seem to be wanting their chicks to start fending for themselves, I guess, but it'll be a few weeks yet. There's the pair chasing the parent. There they go. Somebody just told me they saw one of the parents go thundering head over heels with the chicks chasing it. That's a historic hut there.
See the skua flying around.
The historic mission is the
Gorgeous scenery. There's the skua on the lookout. But the chicks are pretty big and the eggs are all gone, so whatever they got is going to have to suffice. It's my final picture of this area on Cape Adair, and I call this the climb of the penguins. You've seen penguins run. I didn't know they could do that before. They can hop out of the water. They're great swimmers, everybody knows. This one was totally new and almost shocking. You see this very steep hill, like 1,000 feet up. And this is taken from the ship as we're leaving the area. And if you zoom in, let's see. Look, they're up in the snow. What? Oh. Yeah. Well, look, they carved moguls too.
Wow.
We didn't see anybody skiing down, but they would just take the tracks going up and down.
you see them on the snow easily, but they're off to the side too. And in fact, over here, you see the pink guano, you know, that's guano. So they're nesting there, and they've got kind of moguls carved into the ground, probably to have the nests. And they go up, further, 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 further. Scale it down a little bit. You can see that don't do that. They go up here and look at this whole region around here is full of penguin nests. And you can see the individuals all over the place. And further over here, there's this rock ledge, which is more than halfway up. And they're just all over the place. By the way, when they get their bellies full, it's going to last about 2 weeks. So if they're nesting up there, that means they got to come down, catch a bunch of fish, and go back up every couple of weeks. So, but they go even higher. Let's see. Here we go. There they are. They're all the way up on the very top of the ridge.
If they don't have any land predators, why would they put all that out?
For one thing, space. You saw it's pretty crowded down there. One of our expedition crew members said that since the upper parts actually get ice-free sooner, that some of the earlier penguins would go up there and get their nests.
But
not-
it is a big question. It is
Yeah.
a big question because it's a lot of effort to go up there.
Yeah, not sure how they get down, but they do.
Are different species at different levels, or do they all mix?
They're all Adelie penguins.
Oh.
That's why they're my favorite penguin, because, man, they can do that. And I like hiking in the mountains too, but, you know, I would find it pretty daunting to go up and down that.
So they probably can walk it down.
They might. But actually, and I've got Karsten Borchgrove, you know, the guy who led the expedition that built that hut in 1899. He saw them, and he said they build their nesting up to 1,000 feet. So they were doing it certainly 123 years ago.
Did you encounter insects?
No. Well, there was one inside our igloo, but it was,
We did see
yeah.
that bug, but that was the only bug.
yeah, we didn't, there's almost no animals permanently. There's a couple of insects that do live there. And off we go, thus the last of Antarctica, the continent that we see. We visited some lovely, exquisite islands on the way, but we don't have time to go into that. Except for a few points I just want to make that's kind of a glimmer of hope for what humans do. The first one, this is Macquarie Island, owned by Australia. And man, after all the time down there, we saw the green. It was like, look at that green. Oh my God. It was, but look at these ugly things here. What those were penguin processors. After humans killed the whales, killed the seals for their oil, they said, penguins have oil, you know, oil, fat, it's good for keeping warm. And so they've got lots of good oil in there, and these were penguin processors. And the penguins would go out in there, they put them in and get all the oil out. And they dwindled down to just a few thousand penguins on the island. And so I guess the ray of hope is that they stopped doing it, and now look at them.
Yes, king,
No.
these are kings.
King penguins, yeah. So another glimmer of hope is that in 1959, a lot of countries, at the height of the Cold War, so it had the Soviet Union, the United States, signing a treaty to not be claiming the land or to use it for commercial or military purposes and to share scientific data. That's an admirable thing, and it still goes on. There's a lot more nations signed up, and it keeps getting revised and enforced. It's kind of a model for future explorations. We're exploring space. Right now we say the moon is useless, but they said Antarctica was useless as well. Of course, you don't see China or Russia on this list. It's got some ways to go to have any impact. So I'll end the presentation with just a beautiful picture, and almost looks like a white bird. And the penguins enjoying life and all the colors of Antarctica. So.
Let's just have about 10 or 15 minutes of Q&A. Go ahead.
So the very first place you went ashore, the first picture you showed us, there were some structures there.
Can you just state the question loudly so everyone can hear it? And if you don't think people can, Jack, can you repeat the question?
Yeah.
Okay, so the very first place you landed, there were some structures there, old, but where was that? What were they from? It looks like there was like a big mast or a metal structure out in the background, almost like a dirigible landing boat.
I believe that was an antenna.
Okay. Where was it?
It was King George Island and the Shetland Islands, the South Shetland Islands.
Thank you.
Who was first?
Where?
I think you got your hand up first.
How do you get a ticket to this endeavor?
Or there were a couple of medics aboard
Okay.
that got to go and serve as a medic. So they were kind of bored. They didn't have much to do. So hey,
Not till the Ukrainians showed up.
well,
But even then,
even then.
yeah. But you can also, I say, if I were a young person now, to be a naturalist aboard one of those ships, you can do that. I mean, you
Yeah.
have to stock up on some knowledge and specialize in an area. But there were a lot of people, young people in their, I'd say their late 20s, early 30s.
And they were there as researchers, not
yeah,
just
no,
as tourists.
No, exactly.
In all the area you were along the Ross, in the winter, the Antarctic winter, would that be all iced in?
Questions about the
repeat-
extent of the Ross
Just
ice.
repeat so everybody can hear, because
That's
not
what's
everybody
going
can hear the
The place where
questions.
you went, where there were all kinds of ice that you were going
Yeah.
through, is that all?
The question about the extent of the Ross ice shelf, and it extends out further in the winter than it does in the summer.
It almost doubles. I believe the
Yeah.
continent almost doubles in size with the
Yeah.
winter ice. Yeah.
Yeah, the extent of the ice is much larger in their winter. I think you in the back were next.
I've always been intrigued by that continent and would love to visit it, but one of the concerns I have.
Just please raise your voice so everybody can hear.
Yes, I'm concerned, I'm wondering what the level of potential degradation is from ecotourism on Antarctica, and was that discussed?
That's a good question about the level of degradation by ecotourism. At least I can only speak for our expedition, and they were extremely rigorous about following all the protocols. If you wanted to, I mean, our boots were cleansed getting off the ship and back on the ship. We were not allowed to touch the ground. If we had a backpack with us and wanted to get into it, you could not set it on the ground. You could not set your knee on the ground. They were concerned about bird flu, and so to get into your backpack, you just put your feet together, spread your knees, and set it down between your ankles.
Wow.
And we did that.
But, I mean, that is a big and excellent question because we too were concerned. I was especially concerned about that. I felt that, okay, we're on this ship that has been constructed to be a highly sustainable touring ship. They had many, there were many things in place in terms of processing waste, food waste, etc., to make it less impactful on the environment.
it's National Geographic after all, and Lindblad. But I mean, there is, you know, the animals, we're afraid of the ship. We go past icebergs, and the penguins and the seals they'd run away. So, I mean, there is certainly an impact in different ways. I mean, I was concerned about the noise of the engines of the ship, even though the ship has been designed to be as low impact as any modern vessel like that can be. They took us on a tour through the entire ship and down into the engine room. They explained, I thought they were very transparent as an organization. But
What kind of fuel?
diesel fuel.
Okay.
Yeah, but there too, they tried to, or they did, in fact, use, they had it extremely efficiently constructed. I won't go into it.
What the diesel engines did was charge batteries.
Yeah.
And so the actual propellers were driven by electric motors, which is a lot quieter in the water. And so you don't have the sonic pollution of having a direct shaft, you know, connecting between the engine and the propeller. And so it operated more efficiently for fuel.
As a follow-up to my question, the Zodiacs that you went out and it appeared that they had outboard motors, so I'm assuming they were, most of them are two-cycle, and then there is that potential for fuel and oil leakage.
I believe they were 4-cycle. They didn't sound like 2 cycles. And you know what? I never noticed any, you know, the typical color oil thing you see on there. So
In the terms of cleanliness, when they would bring them back up from ship, were they also disinfected of some sort each time they come back?
I expect so.
I didn't hear the question.
Were the Zodiacs themselves, when they were lifted back up into the ship, were they disinfected as well? My extremely strong belief is that the everything was treated to the ultimate means that it could be. And yeah, again, but ecotourism is accelerating down there. There is more of it, and it is a concern. I mean, no question, there are more visitors to Antarctica all the time. So it's certainly a concern. Yeah.
Did any of the presenters talk about the fact that hundreds of thousands of years ago, Antarctica had the climate of New England? Rivers, lakes, fauna, trees, etc. Any conversation about that?
Wasn't going Wonderland thing, I mean.
In a general sense, I mean, the climate has changed in places, you know, throughout all of time.
It's stunning though, when you think about it.
What's
Antarctic, the climate of New England, how did that happen?
There's lots of reasons dealing with the orbit of the Earth and how the moon, and you know, those are subtle ones. You know, we've had ice ages, you know, but there is a big change in the climate happening right now that correlates extremely highly with humankind's impact. Carbon levels in the atmosphere, and it's changing faster than we know of it ever happening. Yes.
I was just up in the Arctic 2 weeks ago, and on the vessel I was on, there were quite a few people who earlier in the year had been to the Antarctic. And when they were in the Antarctic, and it must have been earlier in the summer, the snow was so deep on some of the areas that they could not land from the Zodiacs because it was like 50 feet of snow. They couldn't get up to, you know, land. But also they wore booties and so on. Not traction.
Yeah.
They do Arctic plunges up there too.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Gotta get your badges.
Well, I was always under the impression that Antarctica was a desert and that the snow accumulation that occurred over millions of years. Is that true? You mentioned it snowed once that one time you were there.
down.
Yeah, the actual snowfall, mostly it doesn't fall from the sky very much. It blows, and you get snow drifts everywhere.
That's,
But obviously some has to fall because otherwise it wouldn't be there. But it is, you know, a desert is typically called anything with less than 10 inches of precipitation per year, and that would be like water precipitation. So
And
that
we
would,
were out by the shoreline. I mean, you go to the interior and it's a whole different thing in there. In the interior, it's much colder, much windier, dry, very, very, very dry. Yeah.
you?
Could you speak to the, I believe it's an international scientific organization that actually has oversight? I mean, it's not like just anybody can, you know, take a boat down there, I understand, but you have to go through certain protocols, and did they talk about that governing body?
Yes, well, and again, the question was about the governing body setting rules for going ashore or being down there. And yes, there is. I forget the name of it.
It's the Antarctic Treaty.
There's the Antarctic Treaty, but there's this organization,
Oh,
I
yeah,
forget
yeah,
the name of it.
absolutely.
And they, you know,
Gabriella talked about that.
you've got to get permission to go on some of the islands. You know, like that one where the penguins were jumping and we did the polar plunge. We were physically able to land there, but we did not get permission to land there.
China recently requested that they be given a research site. There were concerns about, well, what are the real purposes? Are they scientific? Are they military, intelligence gathering?
Well, part of the Antarctic Treaty forbids military operations. In fact, the U.S. closed a naval base down there in response to that. But there are a lot of regulations have now, and that's partly why we have these protocols, and we followed them every bit about contaminating the land. Do not bring anything off the land or leave anything on the land. So it's quite strict, and there is an overseeing body that enforces that.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And thank you, Jack and Tina, for sharing your experience. I know that Windham World Affairs Council is very, very unique in our country for punching well above its weight, so to speak. We're one of the, if not the, smallest chapters, but I would say arguably one of the most active, despite being so small. But because of Dr. Jack Jewell, we have an additional claim to fame. And that is that Windham World Affairs Council can boast all 7 continents being presented upon. And I'd be willing to guess that Antarctica is one of the most difficult to have a presentation on. So thank you very much for earning us the trophy. I heard it's in the mail. It's coming, and we'll put it in the trophy case. Please, friends, if you did not register, please remember to register at the table, and please consider being a member so that we can continue to offer these forums. Again, there's some eats and some refreshments, and thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.